So we're back on the bench top today. This is the Coyote, which, I had shown some driving footage, and ultimately I was saying that these tires here are not really working out great for rocks. I watched some videos from some other YouTubers that, were modifying tires, cutting lugs, siping lugs, that kind of thing. One of the sets of tires I was watching him work on was something that's like a super swamper, and ultimately, what he's doing is taking lugs out of the center to create a straight path across the tread pattern, which these tires already have, and then also taking, the in-between lug and trimming that down so that, you have more space in between the large lugs, which again, this tread pattern already has. And so, I'm not convinced totally that this is necessarily a poor choice in tires. I think, what I'm fighting against here on the tire end of things is rubber compound and or the need for better foams. This is just the foams that these tires came with, and I do think that it's entirely possible that they could be working against me, where they need to be softer or dual stage or something of that nature. I spent some time cleaning the tires today. I'm going to give them another wipe down with some simple green, which not only cleans the tire, but, helps to soften the rubber compound. We're supposed to be getting a break in the rain at about 11 o'clock. I'm going to charge up some batteries after things dry out, and maybe, 3 o'clock this afternoon or so, I've got a place where I can go and run this thing where it's not really so much trail work, but it is basically a paved path, so that I'm going to get, some good scrubbing action on the tires. And then off the side of the paved path, I know that there are several locations where there are rocks to climb on and that kind of thing, where again, I'm going to get, some feedback on how the chemical is reacting to soften up the rubber compound. And then if that's not enough, I'm probably going to pull these down, take them off the rims, and maybe go in and, modify the foams to give them, more of a two-stage feel, and go from there. I do have an extra, like I said, another set of tires coming that's kind of in that Hyrax style pattern. And tracking said that they were basically en route to be here today. I watched them, get to the location that ultimately usually has them marked out for delivery next, and then they took a hard turn and went back over 2 towns away from me, so they probably won't get here till tomorrow, which is still fine, because ultimately they were originally not supposed to be here until Friday. So that's going to give me, potentially tomorrow to feel those out, see what that rubber compound is like by comparison to these, probably swap them on, maybe get some run time in tomorrow afternoon to start scrubbing them in, and then I'll still have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday to potentially put some more run time on them if I feel like those are the better choice. And I also have the option to go back to the original stock tires, which I know how those perform. I've got a good amount of run time on those to, get those broken in, that kind of thing. And so, I've got options at this point, which is good. Competition is on Sunday. I did go ahead and modify my my winch placement. Yep, that's locked in. You can see I've got a hair tie, and all I did was, loosen up these 4 screws where the clipless body mount is able to lift up, slide it underneath, and tie it on the back. And so now what you wind up with is something where ultimately you've got a little bit of stretch in the hair tie, which keeps tension on the winch line and also allows me to pull the body on and off without having to power up the winch and let out some line to release what we've got going on back here. And so it makes it really nice and easy. I don't necessarily like the looks of it nearly as much, but whatever. We're going for functionality with this concept, and so that's how that is. So progress is being made. At least I choose to believe that. I made a bunch of video footage yesterday of me working on this project, which is the chassis and motor kit that was sent to me by someone from the forum. I've done a fair amount of modification work to it as far as the setup goes, where these are different tires and wheels then, was sent along with it. These here are a relatively inexpensive set of kind of generic tires that I found on eBay, but I've tried running them a little bit and I am pretty impressed so far. They're like a 64 millimeter tall. The rubber compound is really soft and sticky. The foams seem pretty nice. I changed the shock position a little bit to get it to sit a little bit differently. I have added these Endura metal plates on the side so that I've got places to mount my ESC and battery and so on and so forth. And then of course I'll have to sort out what to do about a body. I added a ramp crab brass servo mount, which allowed me to use the Me-Us Racing 8 kilogram servo up front. And then the trio wheels that I put on there come with 2 different adapters for wheel offset. And so I've got the wide pattern in the front and the skinny pattern in the back, and so that there's about an 8 millimeter difference in between the two, and so that for competition purposes going forward now, where it doesn't have 4-wheel steering on it, you get through that gate. Now the rear of the truck is narrower, and so that is going to be easier to get to follow through without hitting anything and picking up penalty points. So like I said, I did make a video, showing some of the work I've been doing on this. Unfortunately, like I said, there's, some trials and hardships being a smaller channel where you're limited to a 15-minute video. It is very difficult to create content that really shows, what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, that kind of thing, and keep it under the time without having to make 2 and 3 and 4 part videos of things, which hopefully I am on track to get rid of that problem. The biggest thing that would help with that is continuing to pick up subscribers is ultimately what YouTube goes by. Once you hit a certain level, then they remove that limitation and, things get a lot easier from there. But thanks to those who have signed up recently. I appreciate it. And those that have continued to stay subscribed to the channel, I appreciate you guys as well. But until next time, we'll see you then and have a great day.